This is a review of methods in C#. Okay, methods can also be known as a subroutine, a procedure, or a function. They're all pretty much ways to access or modify our object's state. In other words, change the color of a car, change the color of a dog, give the dog a name, access the dog's name, that type of thing. There are several different types of methods that we can categorize them in. The first is an accessor. Just like it sounds, it accesses or gets the information about your object's properties. What state is your object in? The second is a mutator or a modifier. These will change or set your object's properties or state. In other words, my car dot set color blue. Another type of method is a helper method. A helper method is generally a private method that's only used inside of a class. It's not really used by the object itself. Instead, it may be used by the class to automatically be called to help calculate something, for example. The last type of method we're going to talk about is a constructor. So remember that a constructor is a special method that you're going to use to create your object. You can have default and parameterized constructors, and you're going to use this when you declare your objects. Okay, a method signature is basically the header of your method. It's going to tell you the access type, if there is a return type, what it is, the name of the method, and then whether or not there are any parameters, and if they are, what. So let's take a look at that a little more closely. The first thing is your access modifier. How is that method going to be accessible? If it's private, such as in a helper method, it's only accessible within the class itself. Typically, we're going to have an access modifier of public. Meaning that once we create our objects, we're going to actually be able to use these methods. So they are accessible outside of the class. The second thing we need to talk about is the return type. Now, if there is a return type, then that's what we put here. We put the data type, such as a double or a string or an integer. If there's no return type, we're going to tell it that the return type is void. The third is the name. Now your name should be appropriate. Set color, get name, whatever is appropriate for the method that you are creating, and you want to make sure that when you name it, it's going to identify the task or function that that method is going to be doing. Last are the parameters. The parameters are going to be the variables that are basically passing the values in your call statement to that method. So again, if I had my dog.setName Fluffy, Fluffy would be a string, and that's the value that I will be sending over as the parameter. All right, now parameters define those values that you wish that you want to pass to your method, and you have a couple different ways that you can do it. The first way is passing by value. This is the default way, and basically just the information is being sent to the method. The method can then do whatever it wants to with that value. However, it cannot pass the value back. It only has access to that value within the method. The second type that we're going to talk about in more depth is by reference, or by ref. This is where a value is sent to the method, but the method can then modify and manipulate that value and actually send it back. Think of a value parameter as a one-way street, so you can only send that information over one way. Think of a reference parameter as a two-way street. Basically what you're doing is you're passing over the address that says here's where this value is located. The method can then access that value, modify it, and put that modified value back into the address. Now, for a basic header, again, we have our access, in this case public, void, which is our return type, meaning we don't actually have a return type, we're not returning anything, and then signature, which is the name, and we have no parameters. So basically, this is just something that's going to be called, and it's going to display some text in a label. To actually use the method whenever you want, you're simply going to put the method name, the parentheses with any parameters, and then of course your semicolon. That's going to actually pass it over to the method. The method will execute and then pass back to the next line. Now, parameters provide that information to the method to do whatever its job is. Sometimes the method call that actually provides those values, they can be called arguments or actual parameters. So in this case, we call them just an actual argument. You can add formal arguments or formal parameters to the actual method header. So in this case, I have string name. String name is going to be my, my parameter. And so I may send something over that said my call might be signature programming. Programming would be a value that would then go into name, and then name could be used inside this method called signature. So if I've got public void signature and I have a call that says signature string name, if string name equaled Ms. Keller, then what would happen is this value would be passed up from string name to name. The value is passed over, and then name can be used inside. So written by Ms. Keller would show up in the label. Now the arguments and parameters have to match. So if I have a string in my method call, then I have to have a string in my method signature. The order, the data type, and the number of parameters and arguments always have to match. Now when you specify a return type, you're actually going to add a return statement. So if you have anything other than void, then you have to have a return statement in your method. Public string signature denotes that there is a string that's going to be returned. So I have a return statement that's basically just saying created by John Smith. So it's returning a string. The data type here and what is being returned here must match. So I have a string in both cases, so it's good. Now, when a method returns a value, the method call has to be actually part of an assignment statement. So, you know, if I have created by J. Smith and that value is being sent back over, if all I did was just have signature called and I didn't have it set to something, then that value would just be floating there. So in this case, I have label result.text equals, and then it will be created by J. Smith. So typically whenever you have something that's being returned, it's going to be on the right side of an assignment statement. Now, by value is, again, the default way to pass arguments in C#. Again, a copy of the value is actually made and sent to the method. But again, it's a one-way street. The values are only going over. Pass by reference gives the method the ability to access in memory that value, because our call is actually going to send over, here's the address. So it sends over the actual address of the object, then the method can then modify it and then send it back into that address. To pass a variable by reference, one way that you can do that is using the keyword ref. You're going to put the keyword ref in the parameter declaration, and that tells the compiler that it's going to be a variable by reference. Then you're going to put the reference keyword in the actual call statement in front of the variable, and again it matches up. It looks for, I have a reference parameter and I have a reference argument, so they will be matched. Now you want to make sure that any values are initialized. So if I have a string that I'm sending over and then something's going to happen to that string and then it's coming back, I want to initialize that string originally so that I don't have a null reference. That is a quick overview of methods in C#.